Well, we are a grass-based farm, so our main product really is grass, but using that grass we are doing rotational grazing of grass-fed beef cattle, and right now there are a little over 80 head of cattle roaming around in about 4 different pasture groups, and that's becoming a product that the consumer market is waking up to and finding the health benefits that I was hoping they would find, and we're glad to be able to help provide that to our communities.
Something that stood out, I was researching you, and you claim that you have happy cows on your farm. First of all, how do you know your cows are happy? And secondly, what's the difference between a happy cow and a sad cow?
Well, I think first the difference between a happy cow and a sad cow is stress.
Okay.
And my cows really seem unstressed. Their calves are born, their calves stay with them for the first 10 months of life, and then we go through a calf weaning process, but the calves are still inside of their mothers. They're out grazing, which is what cattle do. They're grazing in an environment they know, with pastures provided to them, and rotationally moved to fresh pasture. As they exhaust one pasture, they get moved on to another.
Now, tell us about a sad cow. What sort of an environment would the sad cow have?
Well, I think first a sad cow would have no option to being able to go outside and make a choice of, does she want to go to the water, does she want to go to the feed, can she go out and graze, can she lay in the sun, in the morning sun and absorb that, be in the shade in the afternoon, where the cow is making the choices of its environment versus standing in a packed housing area with 200 or 300 other head of cattle and limited mobility options, and perhaps the concentrated manure issues and things like that of large masses of cattle together.
Now, what impact does this have on what ultimately goes to the consumer, the difference in the product?
Well, I think that the stress level of an animal at the time of its processing probably has released some different natural hormones that the animal has that kind of tighten them up, versus when I transport my animals to their processing, they go 2 at a time. They spend most of their time playing with their buddy in the trailer until they go into the processing facility, where they're immediately moved through the facilities by appointment.
Now, you and I were talking on the phone recently about a conversation I had with a doctor friend of mine who is very concerned about the hormones that go into today's farm products, because they ultimately reach the consumer and they become a part of the human being's system. And he was saying that the hormones are very unhealthy, and also they have a lot to do with the weight problem we have in this country. And specifically, he was talking about a documentary he watched where people in the 60s were at a parade and all of the Americans were thin. And today, if you see Americans at a parade, they're all portly, and he blames it on the hormones in our foods.
Well, I think that the hormones are definitely a player. I know that typically a lot of hormones are estrogen-based, and there are other issues going along with that, from how they're transforming the public, how they're affecting menstrual cycles in young women and bringing on menstruation in young women at a much earlier age. And this actually gives rise to why a lot of people are looking at the product that we grow, the way we grow it, and thinking that that's a healthy choice.
Well, in fact, I owe you an apology because I haven't done it yet, but I was telling him about your farm, and he asked me if I would drop off one of your cards, and because he's very interested in it, and he's very concerned about the weight problem in this nation. He said, in fact, he had been to Italy recently, and he said Americans in Europe have a reputation as being the fat ones that come in, and we are much different than other tourists that go to Italy and other parts of Europe.
Yeah, I think that, probably across the societies, I mean, surely you look at places where food is harder to get, and where food is less processed, and I think processing has a role in this dialogue as well, that those folks with less intake are actually healthier.
What is the state of the farming industry in New York State in 2012?
Well, it's interesting. Of course, we've had some weather stress this year
Sure.
on farmers' farms and livestock and crops. We're going through a short-term anomaly. But I think agriculture in New York State really has been one of the pieces that has started to lead the economic recovery. Unfortunately, the number of farmers and the age of farmers is coming into play. And I'm a 57-year-old farmer, and that is the median age of farmers in New York State. And so we have to look at how we're going to transition the older farmers and the younger farmers who want to get in and are facing these capital hurdles and obstacles, and are looking for mentoring opportunities and trying to figure out some way to get in. And there's actually an interesting program that I reached out to recently called Farm Link. And that is very much has been generated to see what older farmers might be inclined to look at how to come up with a plan to transfer out of agriculture over some period of time. And it's a clearinghouse where younger farmers who are looking to get into agriculture, or non-farmers who are looking to get into agriculture, are going as well. So I reached out to a fellow who is interested in just that kind of thing, and he said as soon as he got past his daughter's wedding, he would see if his checkbook still had him in the frame of mind that he might look at going into farming in the future.
Well, I didn't realize that farming is such a big industry in New York State. In fact, I did a radio program with someone last night who was talking about the wine industry in New York State, and I guess 80% of U.S. wines come out of California, but that New York State wines have 10%, which is pretty strong.
Yeah, and I've of course watched with a certain smirk on my face about the whole industry of putting wines in the stores and selling that, and to me, of course, being part of the local food movement and whatnot, the obvious answer was put the New York wines in the store,
right,
and be provincial on that, and support our local vintners and vineyards. And I also look, and I'm going to try to participate in this. Recently, the governor just signed the craft brew piece of legislation for New York State, and my understanding is that in order for a brewer to take part in that, 20% of all the products have to be raised in New York State, and I'm looking at going into raising barley for the brewing business, and hope that might be a new direction to help diversify my farm operation and bring in another revenue stream.
It's funny you would feel that way about getting the wines in the supermarkets, because my friend last night who operates a wine store which sells only New York State wines said that would be a disaster, because she said the California wine industry and also the wines that come out of China would be able to undercut the New York State wines as far as price is concerned, and the out-of-state wines or out-of-nation wines would be the ones that would end up in the supermarkets or drugstores or pharmacies or whatever. And she feels it would have a devastating impact on the New York State wine industry.
And that's why I articulate that it should only be pride of New York, New York-produced wines allowed into the grocers.
Well, that's very interesting, but very, very concerned about that. You're not as concerned, though.
No, I think that if the others were excluded and you only took New York-grown wines, then you really have addressed that issue.
But wouldn't we end up with a situation of when we started boycotting other states' products, then they would turn around and start boycotting New York State products, so we'd have a boycott war?
I don't doubt that there would be a new isolationism developing, but in effect, I mean, we see California advertising their milk here in this market, and we already have this push-pull amongst the states, and particularly for dairy producers, where the price of their milk is set in Minnesota and Wisconsin, regardless of the additional costs it takes to produce milk here in New York State. But, again, New York State has had an opportunity with the yogurt industry that has come to roost here. And
so Governor Cuomo did that?
Yeah. So, there is more of a focus, I think, now on understanding that agriculture is important in New York State and to encourage the business. And in Albany County, over the last few years, the number of farms actually has gone up. But they're different farms now. They're people with greenhouses and high tunnel production that are producing food for some of them 10 months of the year. They're producing green vegetables, and so there's a different kind of farming, and there are new people coming into it, and actually a number of the new farm operations in this area are women-owned businesses.
Now, if one were interested in participating in the farming industry, say kids that are in college right now or about to go to college, are interested in agriculture, would they contact the New York State Farm Bureau? Would they go to New York State Ag and Markets, or should they look for their local farm for an internship? Well,
one of the more underused resources we have is the Cornell Cooperative Extension, which is an outreach program that is really focused on agriculture, and that would be a great place for someone with an interest in agriculture to get a tremendous amount of materials to start their learning process. And our agricultural and technical colleges here, as part of the SUNY system, are really good and help a lot. The one part that I'm concerned about is that many times a lot of the focus of the curriculum is on the large-scale, highly intensive chemical, mechanical, capital-intensive type of agriculture that I think actually people are starting to look to get away from, and consumers that are looking for healthy and local foods are looking away from that traditional model, and I hope that there's adaptations in the curriculum to take this so that there is at least a parallel track for the organic and the holistically and naturally grown and directly marketed products as well. I know when I studied at Copelskill College, we studied about cooperatives and we studied about corporations and things like that, but we really did not study direct marketing. And it's been my experience and the experience of some of my colleagues that the more that you can do in a direct marketing type scenario on your farm, the better chances of your viability.